basis of the Franciscan movement is very simple. It's a return to the Gospels, a challenge to live the Gospels as Jesus spoke them, with no frills, no fancy interpretations, to take the Gospels and make them your way of life. The Church has seldom done this. The Church has taken the Gospels and used them as a source of proofs for dogmas, covered the Gospel books with jewels and silver and gold, fought over the Gospels, whether they're authentic, whether this book should be in the Gospels or that book should be in the Scriptures. Very few people have lived the Gospels. In fact, it's so startling when someone does that we remember them as almost being superhuman. This man, John XXIII, is someone who lived the Gospels. He is a pope who comes in a line of over 200 bishops of Rome since the first century. A line of bishops who, because of their increasingly worldly way of life, alienate the entire Eastern Church. A line of bishops who decide that they are going to be the supreme power, temporal power in Europe, who devise for themselves a triple crown, the crown of heaven, the church, and the earth, and wore 3 crowns to show their power over everyone. Bishops who claim to own a vast section of Italy based on fraudulent documents, and who that land had to be pried out of their hands by Garibaldi when he created the new country of Italy, then making themselves prisoners in the Vatican. The Vatican City having a whole set of diplomatic corps, ambassadors, spies, everything else that goes with a country. This man, a simple Italian peasant, who wanted to be a priest, a pastor, and ends up in the diplomatic corps of the Vatican, serves in places like Bulgaria and Turkey and Paris. He becomes the Patriarch of Venice, and then Pius XII dies. Pius XII was Pope for a very long period of time. He was Pope during World War II. He was a Vatican diplomat before that, who had honed diplomacy to a fine science, who knew how to balance the Nazis against Catholic interests and so many different other things like that that today are sometimes controversial. The cardinals who were going to elect the next pope were looking for a safe person, somebody they could breathe a sigh of relief, somebody old who was going to be pope for a couple of years and then die. So they chose this man, overweight, elderly, jolly. They thought he was going to be a safe guy. Instead, he gets in and it's like a virus has invaded the Curia in Rome. He calls a council. He says, we're out of touch with human life. We need to reform the church. And the Curia, which is basically a court filled with officials that are meant to help him in this superhuman job of trying to rule the world, becomes his worst enemy, opposing him at almost every step in this council and the reforms he wanted to bring. At the end of his life, he said, we have served the church. They threw stones at us, but we didn't stop to pick them up, and we never threw them back. They are the ones who devised the name the Good Pope John, meaning this simple-minded, holy person who really doesn't understand the papacy. This nickname of the Good Pope John was supposedly to take away some of his authority as an intellectual power. Before he went into the consistory to vote for the next pope, who turned out to be himself, he said this: "We are not on earth to guard a museum, but to cultivate a flourishing garden of life." The Catholic Church, like much of the Orthodox Church, has become a museum. Beautiful objects that had little to do with modern life. He wanted us to look beyond the walls to find the garden of life that belonged to God.